Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're getting into something that, well, it really sent shockwaves through crypto back in November 2025. We're talking about the balancer hack, just catastrophic. Over $128 million gone.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
The sources we looked at called it the crypto industry's nightmare returning. And what makes this so important for you to grasp is the paradox, right?
Right.
The
Yeah.
core contradiction of how this happened.
That's it, exactly. Balancer. This is a core DeFi protocol. They were proud of their security. We're talking, what, a dozen audits shielding them, 11 security audits overall, and 3 of those were laser focused on the vaults, the really complex part.
And yet, poof, $128 million just vanished.
It really makes you question things.
It forces you to ask, what's an audit even worth if the system can still break down like this so spectacularly?
So our mission for you today is pretty clear. First, we need to really unpack the how. What was the exact technical trick the hacker used? Then we have to face the uncomfortable part. How did the audit process fail so badly? And finally, we need to look at Balancer's big idea composability, this thing they built their whole system on. How did that very feature turn into, well, a massive liability?
A liability that didn't just affect Balancer, it rippled out across the whole ecosystem.
Okay, let's start with the scale, because $128 million is huge, but it wasn't just one hit. What?
No, not at all. This was sophisticated, multi-chain.
Yeah.
Over $128 million total, you said it. But nearly $70 million of that was just on Ethereum. The attackers simultaneously hit Base, Arbitrum, Polygon,
Wow.
and even forks that use Balancer's code, like Sonic and Beethoven. It was systemic. They were pulling funds from everywhere at once.
And a fallout. The immediate reaction from investors. What happened to the money locked in Balancer, the TVL?
Oh, it was brutal. Just
Yeah.
visceral. In the first 24 hours after the news broke, Balancer lost 36% of its total value locked.
46%.
Yeah, that's roughly $348 million just gone. People rushing for the
We
exit.
weren't waiting around for explanations.
No way. Universal withdrawal mode. I think the shock was, if Balancer, with all its audits, can get hit like this, then maybe any DeFi protocol can. Trust just evaporated.
And the person behind this, the sources suggest this wasn't some kid in a basement, right? This was professional.
Definitely looks that way. Connor Grogan, an analyst at Coinbase, pointed out some telling details about how the attacker funded their wallet. They use exactly 100 ETH and 0.1 ETH funneled through Tornado Cash.
Right, the classic move to cover your tracks.
Absolutely. Textbook obfuscation. But here's the interesting bit Grogan noticed. There weren't any recent large deposits into Tornado Cash linked to this attacker.
Meaning?
Meaning they probably didn't need to launder fresh funds for this specific attack. They likely already had significant capital from previous successful exploits.
So a veteran, not a rookie.
Seems like it. Someone who knew the landscape, knew the tools, and came back for a very specific, highly targeted operation. Not learning on the job here.
Okay, so a seasoned attacker hits a protocol that spent, presumably, a fortune on security checks. Which brings us right back to that really tough question Suhail Kakar raised in the sources. Have audits become, what did he call them, useless totems?
It's the heart of the problem, isn't it? We all assumed, more audits, more checks equals real security, a proper shield. But maybe the vulnerability wasn't missed because someone was sloppy. Maybe it was just too complex, hidden in the interactions.
Okay, let's get into that complexity. To understand why the audits failed, we need the how. You mentioned balancer pool tokens, BPTs, and batch swaps. Can you break those down for us?
Sure. BBTs are fundamental. Think of them like your claim ticket or your share certificate when you put liquidity into a balancer pool. They basically represent how much of that pool you own.
Okay, your share. Got it. And batch swaps.
Batch swaps are balancer being efficient. It bundles multiple token trades like swapping A for B, then B for C, then C for D, all into one single transaction. Faster, cheaper, atomic.
Right. BPTs measure the value. Batch swaps are this super fast transaction engine. So how did the hacker weaponize those?
It was incredibly precise. A manipulation of how Balancer calculates prices internally during those fast batch swaps. See, Balancer uses the value of those BPTs to figure out asset prices on the fly, really quickly, within the swap itself, to be capital efficient. The hacker figured out a sequence of actions within a batch swap to trick the protocol, to make it think the BPTs were worth way more than they actually were, just for a fraction of a second.
So they created a fake price spike internally.
Exactly, an artificial imbalance. They basically raced the system.
A race condition.
Precisely. The hacker's transaction exploited this race condition. It let them withdraw a huge amount of funds based on that fake, inflated BPT value before the swap fully completed, before the protocol's normal checks could catch up and realize the real, much lower price. By then, the money was already out.
Okay, that makes the audit failure clear, I guess. It wasn't like they missed a typo in the code. It was a dynamic flaw, something that only appeared during a very specific high-speed sequence of operations involving multiple parts of the system.
Exactly. Audits are good at checking static code, line by line, but simulating every possible complex real-time interaction, especially at high speed, that's much, much harder.
So maybe current auditing methods just aren't built for this level of interconnected complexity.
It certainly raises that question. If a vulnerability only exists in that tiny millisecond window during that exact sequence, it's far more likely to slip through the cracks. It just highlights how fragile smart contracts can be when you ramp up the complexity and interdependence this much.
Speaking of complexity and interdependence, that leads us straight to composability, the core design choice that amplified this whole mess.
Yeah, Balancer's composability was seen as revolutionary. Genius, even. The whole idea is that different DeFi protocols, different pools, can connect and interact like Lego bricks.
Building blocks.
Right. Pools can reference other pools for pricing. Liquidity can flow between them seamlessly. Super efficient.
Sounds great on paper, doesn't it? Maximum capital efficiency, everything linked up. But the flip side, as this hack showed, is that when Balancer took that all-connected idea to the extreme, one breakpoint shattered the whole structure.
That's the painful lesson here.
Yeah.
The attack didn't just drain one pool and stop.
Yeah.
Because the pools were all referencing each other in real time for their pricing and balancing logic, manipulating one pool instantly through the next one out of whack.
And a domino effect.
A perfect storm, a chain reaction.
Right.
The system's biggest strength, that deep interconnectedness, became its greatest vulnerability once breached. It just spread instability like wildfire.
But hang on, surely the risk of this kind of interconnectedness wasn't totally unknown. People talk about systemic risk in DeFi all the time.
They do.
Why didn't the audits flag this specific architectural risk, the danger of everything being so tightly coupled so fast?
That's the big question looking back, isn't it? Maybe the audits focused too much on securing the individual Lego bricks.
And not enough on what happens when you snap them all together at high speed?
Perhaps. They might have missed the vulnerability created by the sheer speed and depth of those interactions between components. And the consequences of this design choice, they were immediate and severe, way beyond just Balancer itself.
Yeah, give us an example. How bad did the ripple effects get for other projects?
Well, look at Berachain. Their reaction tells you everything about the systemic dependency here. The risk of this Balancer problem spreading was so severe that Berachain validators literally had to halt the chain, stop block production entirely.
They stopped their whole blockchain.
Yes, to prepare an emergency hard fork. They paused their entire network just to prevent the contagion, this Balancer snowball effect, from rolling through their own system.
Wow, that's incredible. When one platform's failure forces a completely separate blockchain to just stop, that's the definition of systemic risk made real.
And Berachain wasn't alone. Other projects like Sonic, which used Balancer pools, they immediately shut down their bridges to other chains, suspended their lending feature.
Damage control, quarantine.
Exactly. Trying frantically to wall themselves off from the infection spreading from Balancer's architecture.
Which ties into what developers like Rob Dog from Quark Protocol were saying in the sources, right? That even as DeFi tech gets better.
The sad reality is that risks related to smart contracts surround us everywhere.
Yeah.
It's an admission, really.
Yeah.
An admission that these super complex, dynamic, interconnected systems are creating new kinds of risks. Risks that might be, well, fundamentally hard to eliminate at the architectural level.
So moving beyond the tech, this hack obviously hit market confidence hard.
Oh, massively.
Yeah.
The immediate reaction wasn't just about Balancer's TVL. It was about trust across the board.
Yeah, you can imagine investors thinking, okay, if Balancer, ultra-audited, foundational, technically brilliant Balancer can go down this hard.
Then who can we actually trust?
Exactly. The sources mention even long-term, loyal investors were getting spooked, heading for the exits.
And that fear translates into real money vanishing from the market, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Directly. The numbers are stark. Over $1.1 billion liquidated across the crypto market in the 24 hours after the Balancer news hit.
$1 billion wiped out.
Just from the shockwaves. It shows you how interconnected the fear is, even if the assets are theoretically separate. The instability spread everywhere.
And it wasn't just DeFi tokens getting hammered, right? This dragged down the big names too.
Absolutely. Bitcoin, Ether, even Dogecoin saw sharp drops. It was a cascade, proving that a major blow to confidence in one critical, highly composable corner of DeFi can still rattle the foundations of the entire market.
So even with decentralization, the capital flow, the sentiment, it's still very much linked. One big exploit can ripple through everything.
That seems to be the takeaway, yeah.
Okay, so let's try to synthesize this for you, the listener. After digging through this whole messy situation, what are the key lessons? What do you need to remember?
I think there are three main takeaways that really define the state of DeFi risk after this. First, we just have to accept that even comprehensive auditing isn't foolproof. Not when faced with this level of dynamic, time-sensitive complexity. 11 audits weren't enough.
Right. Audit reports might not be the ironclad guarantee people thought they were, especially for these super connected systems. Second, the specific how, that surgical strike manipulating BPT values during batch swaps, exploiting that race condition, that tiny window to drain funds based on a fake price.
A very technical, very specific vulnerability tied to the speed and internal logic.
And third,
the architecture itself. Composability. That Lego brick idea, hailed for efficiency, proved to be an inherent source of systemic risk. When one brick broke, the connections pulled down others, forcing extreme reactions like the Berachain halt. The interconnectedness became the contagion vector.
okay. Audit limitations, the BPT batch swap exploit, and the double-edged sword of composability. Which leads us to, I suppose, the final, pretty unsettling thought we want to leave you with. Balancer really pushed that all-connected, composable logic about as far as it could go. If even their level of auditing, which was extensive and expensive, couldn't prevent a catastrophic failure in such an interconnected system. Does this mean that the very nature of DeFi, this decentralized, hyper-composable finance, just inherently requires us to accept perpetual systemic risk?
Are we saying that these massive nine-figure hacks are just unavoidable, part of the cost of innovation in this space?
Is it just baked into the model now? Are developers, are investors basically agreeing, maybe implicitly, that catastrophic failure is just part of the game you have to price in?
That's the really big question this whole Balancer episode forces us and you to confront as this ecosystem keeps evolving. Something to really think about.